All right, we now welcome on Ole Miss legend PGA Tour rookie Braden Thornberry. I imagine the last part of that has to sound pretty sweet as well. Eventful few weeks for you. You got married recently, right?
Mhm. Yep, got married on the 21st. Just did our honeymoon in Vegas, so we could kind of do some fun stuff while I also practice because I'm leaving in 4 days to go to Hawaii. So kind of a weird deal. She wanted to for sure go somewhere. I was like, it has to be somewhere that I can like practice in the morning, and then we go to some shows and dinners and stuff at night. So it actually worked out really good.
That's awesome. Yeah, I figure as a pro golfer, a buddy of mine that I played high school golf with, Wilson Furs, playing professional golf, he got married this past Saturday. I feel like December's got to be the month, right? That's really the
Yeah,
only off time y'all have.
yeah, pretty much engagement, wedding, trying to have kids. Pretty much the golfers. It's always like ideally November, December. Right there is always nice. You can only do so much with controlling everything, but we wanted to make it a time like so. We did it on December 21st, so it was a little close to Christmas. Like there was probably a handful of people that couldn't come because they already had family stuff or whatever. But we wanted to make it a date where like no matter if I'm back at first stage of Q school or I'm on the PGA Tour, like there is no way golf can conflict with this date. Like we are getting married on this date, and there's going to be no issues. So that was kind of our thought process, and it worked out good. As long as we could both make it there, it was going to be good. So
And I imagine the latter scenario is a lot better than being at the first stage of Q school.
exactly.
It's been a whirlwind for you the last couple of months, but now like you've had a little bit of an off season, and look, you would have enjoyed your wedding regardless. But I have to imagine just kind of the collective exhale of where you're at in pro golf right now compared to where you could have been has just been an added bonus over these last few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we got engaged November of last year, and it was I'd gotten through second stage of Europe and of like Corn Ferry PGA, but I didn't have really like playable status anywhere when we got engaged. And then to get married, I guess 13 months later and have a PGA Tour card is pretty cool. Like very ideal timing for just to financially and just like comfortability, everything. Which obviously I need to go out there and play well and continue that. But I'm in as good of a spot in the narrative as I could be.
Yeah, and let's go back to the beginning for a little bit. You come out, you win the national title your sophomore year, and then you come out, and I believe you turned pro before they started this PGA Tour U thing, right? You didn't
Mm-hmm.
get the benefit from that. Didn't you miss it by like a year?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was a year or 2 years, but I talked to the guys probably in 2019 or 20, the PJ Tour U like team or whatever, and they said that it was actually mapped a lot off of me and Davis Riley and Will Zalatoris because we all turned pro after 3.5 years, and they were like, which is what they said was true. It's like we don't want guys to go to college for 3.5 years and not graduate. But at the time, with how everything was going, there was no benefit to really going for your golf career wise because you were going to miss Q school and the ideal timings and all that stuff. So a lot of guys would do what I did and go to Q school that their senior fall season as an amateur, and then if you didn't get it, you could return and finish out. But if you did, you could turn pro. So that was kind of the pipeline a lot of people were starting to do. And I think that, and rightfully so, they were like, we don't want guys to do that. So if you stay four, you're available for this stuff. So it was a good change, I think. Like you said, it was unfortunate that it wasn't a thing when I was there because I certainly would have stayed and graduated and all that because I'm still a few classes short from graduating, which I want to do. So I wish it was a bit of a thing, but I'm glad that they used me as an example to help other people.
Yeah, you just didn't get the benefit of it, which
Yeah.
is so crazy to me. Like golf is one of the few sports, really one of the only that I can think of where you were at the top of what you were doing in amateur golf, and then all of a sudden you turn pro and you're just immediately a nobody again. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you were a notable amateur that, if I remember correctly, got a few exemptions, but like aside from that, you don't get any help. You're kind of fed to the wolves. Take me through that transition. You turn pro. What happens immediately after that?
So I had a partial Corn Ferry status. Like I said, I went to Q school. I got partial Corn Ferry status, which made it a tough decision whether to turn pro or not because I knew I would get in a couple early Corn Ferries, and if I play well, I can reshuffle and go ahead. But if I don't play well, I could, like you said, be at square one basically, and maybe play 2, 3 PGA Tour events if I'm lucky enough to get invites. But there's no like concrete path for me, which is like you said, very different from other sports where if you're even a top 40 guy in college, you got a good pathway to to try to improve and all that stuff. So but yeah, I had those limited starts and went out there and didn't play bad, but just didn't really like take advantage like you need to. And then like the next year, you're just right back at first stage of Q school, just like someone that didn't even play college golf. So it's kind of it's a crazy deal. It's a very merit based sport at like every level. There's no like kind of staying above it all like there is in other sports.
Yeah, you get like no head start, and then that next year ends up being like the COVID wraparound season, right? Where you, if I remember correctly, kind of finished in the top 55, 60 in that 2 year long season, which is kind of a whirlwind in its own right. You ended up playing like 45 events because they had to cancel half the year. What was that like? You're in the second year of the Corn Ferry Tour, like you're obviously trying to get your PGA Tour card. The world stops turning for like 4 months. Then y'all come back that late summer stretch. How did you navigate that? What was that like for you?
Yeah, so that was 2019 that I was playing kind of a partial schedule, and then so I go back to like we said, first stage of Q school in 2019, get through first, get through second, win final stage, and I have full status for 2020. So I'm like, okay, great. Like this is, I'd had a couple top tens even in that 2019 season. I just didn't get to play that many events. So I was like, okay, like if I have a full schedule that I can like, plan ahead, all this kind of stuff, like I'm going to be in good shape. I don't even remember how. I think I got off to just a decent start in 2020. We played like four events, and then COVID hits. So then nobody knows what's going to happen exactly for, I don't know, maybe it was probably 2 or 3 months. We were one of the probably the first sport to come back, which being outside and everything makes sense. But so we come back, and then yeah, they were like, there's going to be no cards this year, which everybody. You're on the Corn Ferry to try to get a PGA Tour card, so it's not a great sound to be like, at best case scenario, you're getting a card a year and a half from now. So, but yeah, I mean, it didn't really change anything golf wise. You're just trying to do everything. Do your best every time you go out there. So it didn't really change a lot, but it was disappointing to know that like best case scenario, you're getting it in a year and a half.
Yeah, it delays like your dream and the whole goal of this another year. I talked to Chad Ramey, who won in Maine that next year, but at that point, he had like a machine consistency that
Mm-hmm.
year and had a bunch of like top fives, top tens, but not one. And so like he was in line to get a card, but then it's like you gotta have to do this all over again. And he hadn't won, so there's no more like kind of guarantees past that. And he was like, "Yeah, I mean, you got to control what you can control." But yes, in the back of my mind, I'm sitting there thinking, like, "Are you kidding
Yeah,
me? You have to do
yeah.
this again?"
That's the thing with golf, dude. Like there's always like I feel like other sports don't have little rule changes and stuff all the
Yeah.
time, and like stuff like that. Like there was probably I don't know out of the 25 guys, probably seven that lost because of that, and seven people were able to get in because of that. So it's just you always got to. I try to always just simplify it as much as just play your best golf every time you're out there, and then just kind of hope for the best and hope it kind of falls in your favor.
Yeah, and like you don't get compensated that well. Like people think like Corn Ferry Tour, you're one step away from the PGA Tour, but with the expenses and everything involved, unless you're finishing like top 10, top 12, like it's a tough one. And then they jet y'all around through like Central America and the Bahamas. That's the like great irony and all of that to me. They send y'all down to the Bahamas for those first two events, let y'all like play in the wind and get your asses kicked for two
Yeah,
events.
which now they do the upfront like PGA Tour money.
Yeah.
Who needs it is the upfront on the Corn Ferry because like guys will spend it's like $6,500 to play Q school. You get all the way through, and you're like, okay, great, I have status. Then you have to go, yeah, it's Bahamas, Panama, Colombia, Chile, Argentina. So like, if you don't play well in that stretch, like you're getting smoked financially, and like it's just not a very like easy way. Like especially a lot of guys that have played college golf in the U.S. Like maybe you've traveled to Puerto Rico or Hawaii, but like you haven't done any crazy travel on your own. So like it's quite a shock to the system a little bit. So a lot of guys do struggle early on with it.
Yeah, I played high school golf with at another. He went to another school. Hayden Buckley went to Tupelo High School, but he was around my age and we became friends. Tupelo's a powerhouse. He played the same number as some slapdick like me, so we got to like pretty close. And I remember he told me a story. He was living in Tupelo, and he drove down to Miami, played the Monday queue for either like Chile or Panama or the Colombia tournament, gets in, flies down there, finishes like T30, and I think he ended up netting like negative $400 for the week, even though he
Yeah.
made the cut. Like, is that stressful at all? I know you're not like you can't worry about everything financially on a week to week basis, but when you're flying around like outside the country and stuff, and you're trying to manage all these different things, I imagine there's a financial stress associated with that too that's just kind of
Yeah.
lingering.
Like what we said before, that when you don't get a head start, the only head start you do get playing good in college is you do get decent sponsor money. So I was in a lot better spot than a lot of people. Like a lot of people, like I was saying, they have $0 and then they're spending 6,500 from either them, their parents, somebody like that, paying for their Q school. Then they're getting in. Then of course, yeah, like you're like, all right, the hotel the first week's $2,000, and you're like, my caddy is going to be $1,500, whatever. So you're like, all right, like if I miss this first cut, like I'm down $4,000. You miss the next cut, you're down $8,000. Like there's certainly that was an advantage I had too. Not that I had the most money in the world, anything like that, but I was a little more comfortable than most, which probably did help comfort wise. but no, I talk to guys all the time that like talk about those first events. People have talked about skipping Argentina and Chile because they're like it's just not worth the risk of going necessarily. But I mean that's kind of what the Corn Ferry is. Like you're not expecting to make a ton of money, and it looks like you make good money on like the website. If you look and you're like, all right,
Right.
this guy 175 grand this year, like that's a great salary. But it's like, well, I mean, 10% of that plus probably base for a caddy, let's say it's, I don't know, 1,500 bucks or whatever, and you do 20 events, like that's, 40, 50, whatever, 30, 40, 50 on top of 10%. So that's going right away just from like directly, never even get it. And then there's taxes on top of that. You're spending 3 grand a week on hotels and flights and cars. I mean, I would have to think I've always kind of said the number of 75 grand is like what it costs roughly to play on the Corn Ferry Tour. The PGA is going to be probably closer to 100 with just going to bigger cities and stuff like that. But 75 has always been roughly the number that it kind of evens out if you kind of break everything down. If you're staying in the average accommodations, not staying in the Four Seasons, but not like sleeping on couches every week and stuff, because there's guys that do both. So, but yeah, that's kind of the number. But yeah, 75, then the taxes, everything. So you probably need to make, I don't know, 150 just to break even, and then kind of go from there.
And if you're making 150 on Corn Ferry, you've played well. Like not to
Yeah.
mention if you play average or bad, like you're not sniffing that
No.
kind of 150, 200 range. And so you had a couple years experience on the Corn Ferry Tour. You win the national title. You were one of the best amateurs in the world, and then it kind of reality sets in a little bit. At pro golf's a little bit of a different animal. Was it difficult at all to like stay patient? Did you get frustrated that success did not come as quickly as you wanted?
It's a tough question because I feel like from the outside it would look like, oh, I would be like frustrated with how it was going. But when you're in the moment, it was never really going that poorly. I just wasn't quite like you look at a lot of guys that were in my situation, they'd go out there and win an early tournament or like kind of do something they're not supposed to. So like there were some outliers, and then I feel like I was right there knocking on the door, like had a chance at a couple different tournaments, had a chance at Corn Ferry Finals where I missed it by a shot, and it was like there was a lot of good golf. It wasn't like I was just, out there lost and trying to figure like, oh, where'd I go wrong? It just kind of, for some reason, took a lot longer than I expected to actually just kind of have that break go my way a little bit, which finally it did. It just took, 5 years longer than I anticipated it to. But to answer your question, no, I never really, I would look at my friends that have won majors, stuff like that. And of course, you'd be like, oh, I wish that was me. That could be me. But I always was like kind of working on my own game and like felt like I was improving. So I feel like that made it easier kind of because I felt like I was still going to get there and be improving.
You mentioned missing it by one shot. That was that 2021 where that was when they were
That
still
was the
doing like the
wraparound.
30 and 30. And you
Mm-hmm.
had kind of back ended your way in that thing, right? You got hot at the very end. So like when you walk off the 18th green at whatever that Corn Ferry Tour Finals event, you realize you missed it by a shot. Was there frustration at all? Because it wasn't like you were in a position where like I need to maintain this, need to stay inside the bubble. Like you were kind of coming in hot trying to back in this thing. What was kind of the emotions walking off knowing you missed it by a shot?
Yeah, I mean that was the wraparound season, the 2021 season, and yeah, like you said, I think I finished 55 or 56, 57, something like that on the regular season point. So I played fine that year, nothing crazy, and so you go to the finals, and it's a 3 event or 4 event. I don't know at the time it was either 3 or 4 events, and there's another 25 cards available there. And I went into the last tournament needing to play well. I needed probably like a top 8 or 10 or something like that to get it, and I'm playing well all week. I double number 14 on Sunday. So I'm like, okay, that's probably puts me out. Like I need to birdie 15, 16, 17, 18, like to have a chance. And like probably would get it with that, but three's not going to be enough. So I birdie 15, 16, 17. And then 18's playing really tough into the wind. I don't know if you've seen this hole, but it's all around water, crazy hole. Hit it perfect in the fairway, flight a 7 iron from like 155 straight into the wind to like 12 feet and just run it right over the edge. So, I mean, just like
God.
a slow lip out kind of right over the edge. And it's just like, at the time, I didn't know if that was going to, because I was projected 25 on number 18. So I was like, if I make a birdie, like I'm in. And if I don't make a birdie, like maybe I still have a chance because there's still some guys behind me. So, but yeah, I tap in, do my scores, whatever. I'm in kind of in scoring, looking at it, and I'm projected like 25, then 26. And I'm like, man, like I can't really control anything from here, but like it just is what it is. And then I ended up finishing, I think 27 or 28 with some guys shuffling around. But I don't know. I feel like looking back kind of on a lot of my stories, I should have been more upset and frustrated, but I feel like I always did a good job of being like, oh, I should like, if I shouldn't be upset, I should have just done better. Like I could have shot 3 shots better throughout the entire week and just like not had to worry about that. So I've always been lucky enough, I feel like, to keep a positive outlook on everything and feel like, all right, I'm this close, and I didn't feel like I did everything that I could do. So like I just need to keep improving, and eventually it'll fall through. And that's how it kind of works out.
That year, when you're trying to figure out where you stand, that was going to be my next question. Is like I've been to a number of Corn Ferry Tour events. They do have scoreboards and stuff, but when you're trying to figure that out, when you're like in the last four holes, how are you like? How do you know where you stand? Do you exactly? Are you looking at the scoreboard? What does that look like?
Yeah, like so in that event, for example, they have like more advanced stuff. Normally it's just the leaderboard and some basic like projections or whatever. But that one it shows a lot, like the 25 line, and it shows who's where. It shows the points exactly and everything. So like I saw on that hole that I was projected 25, like my number was in green, 25, and I was like 2 points projected ahead of 26, which is just nothing with one person making a birdie and tying versus not, and all that. So I knew that a birdie would certainly help, and I wasn't going to feel great with a par. But yeah, the scoreboards for the most part in those type of events are very detailed and stuff. And if you ever did want to know, you could ask. But I've been a scoreboard watcher, but like in that kind of scenario, like I'm just trying to make a birdie, and if I can't make a birdie, I'm trying to make a par. Like so, I'm just doing as good as I can. So like at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's just some stressful circumstances, and the weird thing too is I feel like when I've missed like my tour card or a couple different opportunities by one, but they've always been kind of what you're saying, like backdoor, like chances, not necessarily like
Yeah.
bogeys coming down the stretch. It's like, oh, I need a birdie the last four, and I birdie three, or like in Europe, I missed full status on the DP tour by one, and I birdied the last three to miss by one. So like some weird stuff like that, where kind of almost the pressure's off and it's just full go, and then you like come up just short.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying. Like it's a back end type thing. Whereas like when you get in this year, which we'll get into in a minute, I was reading when I was kind of prepping for this interview, Sam Bennett was the one dude that got knocked out when you got in and he shot a Sunday 78. Like that's an expensive 78. Like
Yeah,
that is much harder to keep a positive outlook in terms of
for
kind of
sure.
getting hot late and back ending it. And so you finish that 2021 year and then you go to 2022. Like the reason I was asking if it was frustrating, because like I imagine there had to be a part of you that was like, I have to do this shit over again. Like we have to go through this whole process over again. Was there a piece of that kind of lingering too?
Um, Not really, honestly. Like it felt like I haven't hated playing on the Corn Ferry Tour. Like I just love playing competitive golf. So like my mindset has always been I want to play on the PGA Tour, and I need to play good enough on the Corn Ferry Tour to get there. And I just felt like I hadn't played good enough on the Corn Ferry yet. So like I wasn't necessarily like some guys are always complaining about the Corn Ferry and oh I don't want to be here, all that kind of stuff. It's really not that bad. Like you said, some stuff financially is a struggle and stuff, but like they're very well run events. Like they really are like PGA Tour B. Like they're good events. And I always just kind of had the mindset of like, I'm here now. This is kind of where I deserve to be right now. And I'm going to keep improving until I can prove that I don't deserve to be here. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, and so then 2022, you have a tough year and you kind of lose all status. And we were talking right before we started recording about kind of being a nomad.
mm-hmm.
What was that like? Because you had had the world at your fingertips. You win a national title as an amateur. You play in a Walker Cup team. You kind of grind it out in professional golf. You have one bad year, and all of a sudden, to use the phrase you said earlier, back at square one. I imagine at least after 2022, that had to be a little bit frustrating. Take me through the end of that 2022 year and what your plan was. It's hard to find on the internet what you did for 2023. I
Yeah.
know you played some DP World Tour events, some Challenge Tour events. What happened and what did you do for that next year?
So that was when I lost status that year. I was disappointed. I still didn't play that bad that year, but I had a couple opportunities where I was like leading through 36 holes and like didn't play good on the weekend. So like in the Corn Ferry, it's just the points are so top heavy. You have to play well. But that was the first year I actually felt like I had some struggles. Where the other years I feel like I played well and just didn't quite get it to click, whatever. So that was probably the first time. And when I did lose status, I still wasn't super down because I was like, all right, I'm going to go back to Q school. Like I've never missed at any stage. I'm going to go back to Q school and get it right back and like get pick back up where we're going and get through first stage. I'm like, okay, great. Go to second stage, miss for the first time. And if you miss it second, you have absolutely nothing. So that was like when the reality set in of like, okay, this is like, what are we doing here? Like you said, I was kind of on top of the world a little bit and like it was kind of maybe flatlining on the Corn Ferry a little, but like waiting for my good break. I was close a couple times, and then you lose status. You're like, oh, like is this kind of like the end, basically? Which it feels sometimes it can feel that way when you lose status because like you're at square one and there's thousands and thousands of people, and like you're fighting for like 40 spots every year. So it's like there's no guarantee you'll ever get back. So that was definitely the only time in my like golfing life that I've been like depressed is the wrong word, but just down in the dumps about
Yeah.
like golf in general, my game, everything. So to answer your question about 2023, I did have status because I was also doing DPQ school at the same time, and I'd gotten challenge tour status off of that, which isn't great, but like it's better than absolutely zero. So for 2023, I essentially was like, all right, I'm going to, because I've never had any time to work on anything. Like when you're playing tour golf and then you have 6 weeks off and then you're right back to the Bahamas or whatever, or playing Q school, whatever, you don't have any time to actually tweak things because there's just like you can't tweak something and it's not ready and then go play 15 weeks in a row with it. So I was like, all right, this is my maybe my only chance in my life, like golfing life, that I'll be able to like actually make some changes. So I was like, all right, what do I need to do? I need to improve my irons and I need to get longer. Which not that I was short, but I was like, that's a very feasible, tangible thing that like I can just get my swing speed faster and which makes it farther, makes the game easier. So like, all right, those are my two things I'm going to work on. And I started working with Scott Hamilton in Cartersville, Georgia. He works with a lot of tour guys, and I went to him, and like my swing was not in a very good spot. It'd gotten kind of out of whack a little bit, and I started working the stack system, which is kind of like the speed sticks type thing. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna do those two things. I'm gonna plan a couple events when I get in them here and there, but like I'm not super concerned with them. Like my concern is actually getting better at golf. And for the first time, really in a long time, actually that was my only focus. So I play a couple challenge events. I don't play any good. I'm even doing a couple like swing, like funky things in the tournament just because I'm really working on stuff. I'm not super concerned with those events. And so I get to Q school and I get all the way through. I'm doing PGA and DP again. That starts in probably October or so. So I had whatever it was, 10 months basically to do all that other stuff. Get there, get through first on each, get through second on each, go to DP, and I miss a full DP card by one, which which was disappointing, but I was playing really good golf. Like there was a lot of good golf in there. I had a couple moments in that round or in that tournament where I needed to shoot. There's a 4-day cut. I needed to shoot like 6 under to make that cut. I did it. Birdied the last 3 holes of the sixth round. So there was a lot of positives. Go back to PGA Q school, and then I actually was doing Live Q school in the middle of that too. I forgot about that, but did PGA Q school, got my Corn Ferry card, and then I'm like kind of a sigh of relief. I'm like, all right, like the stuff I've done is clearly working, or it certainly hasn't hurt, but it's like my game's in a good spot again, and now we have a clean slate, start in the Bahamas, and like we can go running from there. So that was kind of what was going on those 12 to 15 months or so.
So I feel like I follow professional golf pretty closely. I know next to nothing about DP World Tour Q School. Where is that? What is that like? I can't imagine it's a ton of fun.
No, well, I mean the first stage they're all over Europe. There's one even in Australia. I think they do them in the UK, Spain, like kind of all over. There's probably 15 sites or something spread out. And then all the second stages, there's five of them, I think, and they're all in Spain, just all throughout Spain. And then they actually do this is actually a good system. The final stage is the week after second stage, so you don't have to like come back and then go over for final stage. There's like a couple day gap, so you can just play second stage, get through, drive or fly or train or whatever to final stage in Barcelona or near Barcelona. And so that was kind of it's actually a pretty good setup for an American. Makes it tougher to get over there, but overall it's a pretty good setup.
Is that overwhelming at all? Because you're flying halfway across the world. You have all kinds of different logistical things you have to worry about. Then also you have to play like golf for your livelihood. Like it was that overwhelming trying to do that?
Not really. I mean, it's what I've always done. So it's like kind of, I don't really mind the long flights that bad. Like I did when I was like younger, like even in college when we go to Hawaii, it seemed really bad. But I've flown to the Middle East and Thailand a couple of times now and everything. So it doesn't feel near as bad now doing those like, 8 hour flights to London or whatever. But overall, the was tricky about one of them was the second stage in Spain in 20. The years get confusing. In the fall of 23, I shot 81 in the first round. It was the wind was blowing like 25. I think the low round was like even par or something, but still 81's never good. So that was a depressing round because I'm in Spain by myself, shoot 81, and I'm like driving back. I'm like, what am I doing with my life here? Like that was a crazy moment. And then, but then was able to come back, and I think I shot like the wind the next day was still blowing like 15 to 20, but not like 35 like it was before. And I was able to shoot like 67, 66 and get right back in the mix, and then shot 200 the last day to get through on the number. So that was a cool comeback where, like I was saying, I was like very proud. Even though I missed by one at final stage, I'd done so many good things in that like 2 weeks that like I was taking a lot of confidence when I was coming back to Florida to do PGA final stage.
So that year in 2023, you had the full challenge tour status, if I'm not mistaken, but obviously you didn't go over there and play a full season. And
Mm-hmm.
I have to imagine some of that has to be financially driven, right? They're not paying you worth a damn over there. I mean, you're living all the way across the world. It sounds like maybe the juice is not worth the squeeze trying to go over to Europe and play a full Challenge Tour season. Because also, and this is one of the things I've talked to Wilson about, is even if you got to the DP World Tour, there's no like direct pathway back,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I mean, you'd basically have to get to like top 60 in the
Yeah,
world or something
well
like
they
that.
did just change it. I guess a couple of corrections is I had partial status on the challenge tour. I had played
Okay.
3 events. I could have played a few more, but it wasn't like you said. That's not my grand goal. Like I've always played the DP as a backup for
Yeah.
Corn Ferry PGA, which like sounds bad to say, but like being an American, like playing over there full time, it is better money than the Corn Ferry, all that kind of stuff. But like you said, I want to be on the PGA Tour, and the best path to the PGA Tour is through the Corn Ferry. They
Yeah.
do have like the top 10 guys now on DP come to the tour, all that kind of stuff. But it's you have to play really well, and like you're going to be in a lower category coming from Q school, all that stuff. So that would be tough. And but yeah, the primary and easiest way to the PGA Tour is get on the Corn Ferry, finish top 30 or top 20, whatever it is that year, and like that's a very uh, like it's easy to wrap your head around like what you need to do.
Are the golf courses any different over there? I mean, everyone thinks like links golf, but obviously not every course in Europe is links golf at all. I'm curious, is it difficult to adjust to golf courses over there? Is it pretty much the same?
It just totally depends on which course. I actually haven't played any like full links, like the handful that like are
Yeah.
famous. I haven't played those like full on link style courses where you're putting from 40 yards off and all that stuff. But the one I played in the UK was in Bristol. It was a little bit linksy, and like really, I think the main thing you notice, which this sounds bad, but like the courses aren't in as good of shape for the most part. Like I don't think there's not as many like country clubs where there's just millions of dollars pumped in. So like
Right.
the are a little bit worse, and but they are fun to play. It's a much different style of golf. Like people don't really ride in carts near as much. Like I bet 85% of people here ride in carts and like 15% there do. Like it's a big difference in like the way the courses are designed, the flow of them, all that kind of stuff. But from the courses I played, for the most part, it's still just like it's golf still. Like I didn't have to like adjust my game a whole lot or anything like that. But I didn't. I've enjoyed playing over there when I have gone, and I definitely want to more. Like I played Asian Q School a couple years ago in Thailand, and it was the same kind of thing, same golf, nothing crazy, but it's just cool to see the little bit different nuances of like the caddies in Thailand were all girls and like stuff like that, where like you would never see that here, just little like cultural differences, and it was cool to see that stuff.
You mentioned in there that you did the Live Q School thing. I'm curious, what went into that decision? There's obviously been a ton of stuff between the PGA Tour and Live the last couple of years that honestly goes above my head. I can't even really
Mm-hmm.
keep up with it. What went in the decision to do that? Did you fear if you made it there any sort of like backlash to getting back to the PGA Tour? How did you decide on doing that?
Well, really, what it came down to is at the time that I was playing Live Q School, I was not a member of the PGA, the Corn Ferry, of
Yeah.
any really. I was a member of like Canada, which I played that Q School in 2023 early, but didn't. I got like partial status, but um, really, it was. I was like, all right, I can go in like in a week span or a 2 week span, have a chance at a DP card, a Live card, and a PGA card, and a Corn Ferry card. I was like, I like my odds if I can make the runway as long and as wide as possible for all these things. Like, because essentially, or like when it comes down to it, I'm playing golf. Like, I'm trying to do stuff good, like make money, like all this stuff, and you can't do that from your couch. So I'm just trying to lay out every possible situation where I can succeed, and then go see where it falls. And um, the tricky thing was that the Live Q School was before PGA Q School, and obviously, if you get your Live card, it's better financially, but it's very uncertain because like you don't know if Live's going to go away tomorrow or if it's going to be the best tour to play on in 20 years. Like nobody really knows. So that was a little bit of uncertainty. But to answer your question, it was really just I wanted as many opportunities as possible. I knew I was playing well, and I just wanted as many lanes as possible for success.
So if you had gotten your Live card, like I'm curious how that works. Like, would a team pick you? Would you play as an individual? And also, I don't, the money is right now over there is absurd. Again, who knows if this last 2 years, like if you had gotten it, would you have been like rich immediately? What was the next step had you gotten it?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, a Live card or a Live card, I don't know if they have cards, whatever it is, a spot on Live is worth roughly like $2 million. Like if you finish last every week,
Damn.
it's like 120 grand is like last place, and then there's like whatever 14, 15 events. So like pretty much if you finish last every week, it's pushing 2 million. So I mean, 2 million to 40 million is kind of what the guys make. So So that's very good financially. And yes, you would get put on it. Like the guys that did get through, you get put on a team, and like I think one of them was put on Phil's team and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool. And the live model in general, I think, does have a lot of potential. It's just tough to like. It's just tough when you're coming against someone that's been there for 80 years and like perfected their craft. Really, it's tough to kind of get into that market. And but I'm very interested to see what goes on. I know stuff is starting to kind of fall into place a little bit with a merger or investment from PIF or whatever. So I'm not an expert on any of that stuff, but I do think it'll start to happen probably this year to next year.
Yeah, I've always been interested in the way, like, people, when the live PGA Tour thing happened, people, like, the thing that made news was like them poaching PGA Tour stars. But where I thought live was actually pretty smart, and if they are going to be around long term, can really make some hay, is poaching guys like a Eugenio Chikara and these young, really talented amateur guys that whose pathway to the PGA Tour is honestly really shitty. Even the best pathway is tough and it's a long road. And the alternative to that being on live is like you can get rich pretty much immediately. I mean, Andy Ogletree is a Mississippi guy that's kind of taken that path, and it's a tempting thing. It's I understand definitely like why you'd play live
What's
Houston.
tough, a guy that comes out of college, especially like you take NIL out of it, they're making, a little bit of money from that now. But like these guys, especially if their family has not had a lot of money and stuff, and they're like, you can have a guaranteed spot on live for a year. I mean, that's life changing money for a lot of
Immediately, as soon
right
as
now.
you sign the dotted line.
So that's really tough. And like you said, there's no guarantee, which is why they kind of sped up the PGA Tour U process of giving a
Yeah.
PGA Tour card and stuff. So that was a little bit influenced with that too. But yeah, I mean, I think it's tough for the PGA to combat that if like yeah, especially if like a Chikara or like any of these young guys that come out and let's say like a Sam Bennett before, I'm sure they talked. I don't know any details of that, but like if they're like, hey, we'll give you $3 million and 2 years out here. I mean, that's you're pushing $10 million of a guaranteed money probably if you got there and played decent. So it's certainly a tough decision, and like I don't necessarily fault people either way. I think going to live is the right decision for some people, and not is the right decision. And I wish more people would just like accept that for what it is.
Yeah.
That like just because it's not the right move for you doesn't mean you have to like bash them for going, because everyone's life and situations are different. So
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, you don't have to answer this, but you were one of the top amateurs in the world kind of right before the live thing. Did you ever get a call from a Saudi Arabia area code? Did they ever talk to you?
no, because I was a little too late, I guess. Because I mean, I turned pro like January 2019. I don't know when live. I mean, I guess they were kind of
Like 22-ish, 20.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a little too late. Like I was on the Corn Fair, I remember when that stuff started. And like I do think they were trying to kind of get guys early. So like if I reached out and was like, "Hey, I'll play," like maybe something could have happened with that, but it wasn't worth the risk. Like when you have full Corn Ferry and like you don't want to go get banned and then it implode in two events and then you're like, "Oh, now I'm in no man's land." That was stupid.
Right, because
Like,
you don't know what this is, and they're handing out
yeah,
suspensions left and right. So, like, what
yeah,
this is not
exactly. Like,
worth reaching out, right? I mean,
oh,
it's
absolutely not.
okay. So, no live reaching out to you. So you go through this year, and kind of leading up to the Corn Ferry Tour Championship, you were kind of hovering around. I think you were 51st entering the week. You have a hell of a week. You have a hell of a final round. I was watching that final round, and I don't remember off the top of my head because that was a whole like 9 weeks ago. My brain just doesn't go
Mhm.
back that far. You had needed like a solo or a T second to kind of get the card. Or obviously a win was going to do it for you. When you birdie 18, you win the event. You had an awesome interview with Jake Marsh after where the emotions kind of came pouring out. Did you know on 18T what you had to do? Take me through that final hole.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess going back into more like the middle of the round, I remember starting the day, my dad had texted me like, one great round could get you on the PGA Tour, and like it was true, but like it was a long shot. Like I needed to probably shoot 5, 6, 7 under. It's blowing probably 25 all day, maybe like 15 when I tee off, but like for the most part that day it's blowing 25. And I get off to a good start, but like still not really thinking anything crazy. I birdie 7 to go 4 under on the round, and I'm like, okay, like maybe I'm up here in the mix now. Like I can do something. Uh, Number 8, 9 were playing tough, make pars. I look up and I'm tied for second on the leaderboard after 9. I'm like, okay. And like you said, I needed a tie for second with one other person at the worst. Like if there's two people, I don't get it. So I'm really thinking like I need to win to be safe. And I remember having the thought walking to 10, like, all right, if I can just somehow like have the 9 of my life right here and just shoot 4 under on this back 9, which is going to be a very tall task. But if I can shoot 4 under on this 9, I'll just like run away with this tournament because like people aren't going to be making birdies, like whatever. And then I birdie 10, like, all right, let's go. Play 11 well. I missed like an 8 footer for birdie there, but still playing good. And then just battle the whole back 9 because it's playing so tough back there, a little tougher than the front. And like you said, I get to 18. And still, like we talked about earlier, I don't really know because the leaders are on like number 9. So there's a lot of golf to be played. But I'm in like probably fourth at the time. And I'm like, a birdie would go a long way. Like, I don't know where this is going to put me. But if I can make a birdie on this hole, I can sleep at night. Like, you birdied the 18th, you miss by one, you make it by one, whatever happens, happens. So hit it in the fairway, hit a great drive, great shot from like 275 just over the green. And I have kind of a tricky chip. It's kind of like sticky rough up and over this hill, like into off the right wind. Just not an easy shot at all. Like, easy to get within 15 feet, but not easy to get like right near it. And it comes out kind of a little like Duffy almost. It lands probably 5 feet short of where I was trying to, but just has absolutely no spin. So it chases up the hill perfectly, trickles over, goes to about 2 feet. And I'm like, okay, like, thank goodness. That was like honestly just lucky. Like, it was a good shot, but it was lucky too. Like, just as easily could have been 6 feet or whatever. And on TV, it looks like basically a gimme, but like when you're over it and that wind's hitting your back, blowing 20 or whatever, and it didn't feel like a gimme, but luckily was able to knock it in. And then I had a weird feeling. Like, I'd said this in a couple different to a couple different people, but like, I was not nervous on 18 at all. It was really weird. Like, over the chip and stuff, I literally had the thought of like, I don't know why I'm not nervous. Like, this is a big moment. I should be nervous, and I'm not. So was able to get that up and down. And then after I'm walking off the green, I looked up. I think I'm in third at the time, like solo third or tied for third, one person or something. So I'm like, all right, I'm in a good spot, but like, who knows? We'll see. And so my wife now, my fiance comes over and like says great run over, and I can like hardly talk. Like, all the kind of emotions and like stress and pressure like hit me afterwards, which I'm very thankful for that it wasn't during. But I could like hardly get words out. Went and signed my card, and then like you said, did the interview, the current one, where I basically said what I'm saying now, where I'm like, it is what it is. I birdied the last hole. That was the round of my life, shooting 6 under bogey free in that wind and on that golf course especially. And yeah, so I was just being like, it is what it is. I'm not gonna root against people, but obviously I hope I get my card today. So
Do you think not being nervous had anything to do with the fact that you had been close a lot of times before? Like that was not your first time in a position like that.
yeah, I mean, it almost felt like this might sound dumb, but it almost felt like all those moments came to like that moment, and it was like my time. Like, this was like finally. I didn't think it was my time to start the day. I was in 15th or 13th or whatever, and like 6 shots back to start the day. But like, it just felt like when I was on 18, I was like, I'm not missing by one again. Like, it just feels like this is my time to actually have it go my way, all that kind of stuff. And that's why in the interview you were talking about with Jake, that I was so emotional, because it just felt like I hadn't had directly bad breaks necessarily, but just some of the rule changes, missing by one a few times, and I was just like, finally, it fell in my direction. Like, for once, like I feel like I kind of did the same things, but like this one, I made it by a couple shots instead of missed by a couple shots. And I just had so much emotion because I didn't have time to prepare. I feel like, whereas like if I had a chance, with 36 holes, I would have been thinking like, oh, if I get it, I'll do this or like whatever. But like, it all just hit me right then that I'm like, wow, I'm on. He's like, you're a winner. And like, I hadn't won as a pro, like in a legitimate tournament. I'd won some Q schools, stuff like that, but I hadn't won a real tournament like of that magnitude. So he's like, you're a winner and you're on the PGA Tour next year. And like, I just hadn't had any time to process like any of those emotions or what that meant or like what was coming next. And so that was really where that emotion came from. And I'd never had any sort of emotion like that other than like my dog dying or something. So it was kind of a crazy deal.
How closely were you scoreboard watching then? Because if I remember correctly, the way that tournament played out, you didn't know when you tapped in that 2 footer, did you know you had won the golf tournament at that point?
No, 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 not at
Yeah, that's
all.
what I thought. So it was a little anticlimactic in that sense. So when you're on 18, how closely are you scoreboard watching at that point?
So, like I said, I actually to start the day was like, I'm not going to look at a scoreboard at all. I'm just going to go shoot the lowest number I can and see where I fall. But that's a lot easier said than done. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes it's honestly more energy to not look than it is to just look. And so I looked on 9 for the first time, and I was in second after being 400 through 9
Right.
to 8 or whatever. And then I was kind of looking throughout the back 9, and I was kind of hanging out in that second to fourth right in there. And then birdied 18, I think, took me from fourth to third at the time. But yeah, so I tapped in to get into third, and there's still guys on the course. I think they're on like 9 green. So there's a lot of golf to be played, and it's playing tough. So I'm like, all right, like I'm in a good spot. And but yeah, it was a crazy deal. But certainly, so I had to wait it was probably 2 hours in like the player dining or whatever you want to call it. The food wasn't there anymore, but it was just kind of a open room where everybody was watching the TVs. And we're just watching every shot, and like somebody hits it in the water, and you're like, okay, like they're kind of out. Like now we're down to like 4 or 5 guys have a chance. and it just kept dwindling down. And then finally on 18, there was Doc Redman and Brian Campbell both had to make like a 30-yard pitch and like a 50-foot putt. And if they both made, I didn't get my card, and if either missed, I got my card. So it was a like in that moment, you're trying not to like celebrate in your head because like crazier things have happened. Like once
Yeah.
one of those goes in, all of a sudden you got to stress that next one. So, but once one of them missed, I think Doc chipped up and it was like 8 feet by. When he missed, I had my PGA Tour card because I was going to finish second, like we talked about at worst. But if Brian made, I was going to win a playoff, and then there was going to be like depending on how if I won or lost the playoff would have been whether I finished like 29 on the list or 16 on the list, which makes a huge difference too. So that was a stressful deal. And yeah, probably about when they're on like 18T, I went out and I was warming up on the range and just kind of hitting balls, like trying to just get out of my own head, really just think about all the possibilities that could happen in the next 30 minutes. Like I could not get my card, I could be in a playoff, I could win. Like there was just so many possibilities. And I was on the range, and then finally I hear kind of a groan from the crowd when Brian putts, and they're like, you know, you won or whatever. So that was a lot of emotion hit me at once. So that was cool.
Was it weird getting your first like major professional win at the same time you get a PGA Tour card? Because I have to imagine if you got a PGA Tour card, even though you finished like T2, it would have probably felt pretty awesome as well. Was that a weird dynamic too?
Well, it was the only negative I'll say is I didn't really get to enjoy either fully,
Yeah.
which this is very first world problems. I get this, but like we were doing kind of like interview, so there was like the celebration for guys getting their card.
Right.
I was also doing some pictures and all that, so I kind of like didn't fully get to go in either kind of party or whatever you say you would want to call it. So I was like signing a bunch of flags, all this stuff, and then there was like like for all the guys that got their card, there was like an open bar for like 2 hours. By the time I get done, like signing everything, I turn around and they're like, "Oh, last call, last call." So it's kind of a an interesting timing of like, which again, I would certainly not trade it for anything, but it was like having to do both things at once was kind of a funky deal.
Yeah, like every other week, you're the one guy that won the golf tournament.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, like you're with 29 other dudes that just got
Mm-hmm.
their card, which I have to imagine is an interesting dynamic. And
Yeah.
so you get it. You're obviously headed to the PGA Tour, and it's interesting to me. Like a couple guys on our message board were like asking about your career after that happened, and like you're 27 years old. Like in the grand scheme of things, that's not that old to get your PGA Tour card for the first time coming out
Yeah, I
of
think
college.
it's right. It's really right around average. It's just have a little more of a expectations when you're, you know, a highly recruited person and high, you know, number one AM and stuff like that. You're expected to get out there and do it. Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, Matthew Wolf, those guys did where you win right away. But yeah, I think 27 is about average. So it's in the grand scheme. Yeah, I still have a lot of opportunity.
Also, at the same time, I had to imagine that felt like a pretty long 5 years. And I guess, like, to package that into a question, did you ever doubt yourself? Like, was this ever actually going to happen to me? Was there any moment driving through Europe or whatever it may be where it's like, hey, man, is this actually going to happen for me?
Yeah, I for sure. When I lost status, there was it creeps in every once in a while, of course, mainly just because it's very hard. Like it wasn't necessarily like, and it's not as, you know, black and white as like, oh, if I can shoot this number. Like a lot of times there's other stuff that has to kind of go in your favor or can work against you or help you. So, but yeah, when I lost status, there was certainly that thought because, like you're saying, like once I'm at square one, like no one cares that I played great in 2017 or 2018. Like it doesn't matter. Like I have to tee it up and beat these people like right now. And every year, it's noticeable too. Every year, there's more and more good players. Like you can feel it on the Corn Ferry or whatever. Like the skill on the Corn Ferry this year was certainly better than 2019. Like it's very obvious. So when you feel like you're starting to struggle and then everyone else is getting better and better, you certainly have those doubts. And I will say what's been very lucky for me is like when I had those doubts, my like wife or fiance at the time, whatever, she was always like she's believed in me more than anyone. So it was like almost like she never had any doubt, and I could like feel that from her, which like definitely helped me.
Yeah, absolutely. And like one of the crazy parts, you mentioned that being on the Corn Ferry Tour is not the worst place to be, which it is not by any stretch. What's always crazy to me following you guys, if you guys shoot like 70 on a Saturday, you're like getting lapped a lot of the time. I have to imagine some of that's a little bit like, really? I remember I was watching, I can't remember if it was you or Fur or somebody, we were in contention. Like one of y'all shot like 70 on a Saturday and dropped like 40 something spots. I'm like, dude, how do you do this? That part of it has to be. I mean, that kind of encapsulates the Corn Ferry grind, does it not? I mean, you have to go low pretty much every time you put the tee in the ground.
Yeah, I mean that happened to me a couple times this year. Actually, this year I was in contention by far the most. It might not show it on the final like I don't know, like the final results. But if you were like keeping up with it this year, like I was in second, I think 3 different times, and in like the final group going into Sundays. Like you said, I wouldn't go out there and shoot 78 or anything, but it was just like I'd shoot 70 or 71 and like just go from second to 12th or like second to 15th. And like you have to keep your pedal, like your foot on the pedal the entire time because the courses just aren't separating enough because like that guy in 15th is going to go do what I did at French Lick. Like there's going to be people go do that every single time. So like just because you're 3 shots ahead of them, like you got to go out there and ball or they're going to pass you. So the PGA Tour, the courses are certainly more demanding and difficult. So if someone plays bad, there's more of like, guys are shooting more like 65 to 75, where on the Corn Ferry, it's, 64 to 71 kind of. So it's tougher to separate a little bit.
It is tougher to separate. Like you'd mentioned the couple years you're on the Corn Ferry Tour, a lot of them you didn't play bad, you just didn't play great. Like making cuts is not enough on the Corn Ferry Tour. Like if you're not top 15 or better, you really don't feel like you've made a ton of ground up that week. Am I inaccurate with
That's
that?
the problem. Really, like the 4 seasons I was out there, the 3 full seasons, that was my problem. Is like my average finish was probably about as good as guys that were getting their card, but like I always was missing that win or the solo second. Like for some reason, like my best finish was fifth in like 3 seasons. For some reason, and like in college, I was the complete opposite. Like I feel like I either finished 15th, 20th, or I would win. Like if I was near the lead, I would win. And then like once I turned pro, it's obviously a lot deeper and everything, but it just felt like for some reason I couldn't quite shoot that 7 under on Sunday when I'm in, eighth to start the day or whatever it was. So I don't really know what that was, but I'm glad that it finally changed in a very good time for me. So
The last year I lived in Dallas, or the first year, excuse me, I lived in Arlington actually. I lived in those crappy apartments across from the Texas Rangers golf course. I actually got my golf club stolen out of there. So that was really just a fun experience. I 20 that wraparound season, y'all come back by in 2021. I actually followed you for a few holes. Hayden Buckley was there. I followed him, and he was gonna give me tickets for Saturday because y'all, I think y'all get some free tickets. And I walk out of the parking lot and he's in a yellow Mustang. I was like, what the hell are you driving? He was like, I missed the cut last week. Like, we get the shitty cars if we miss the cut, the shitty rentals. And he just kind of looked like a zombie. And it was his like fifth week playing in a row. Y'all had to go to like Huntsville the next week and somewhere after that before there was any sort of break. And on the Corn Ferry Tour, like you have to, if there's an event, you pretty much have to play. There's no weeks off. And I feel like that's an underrated part of like the struggles you guys go through is trying to play that many weeks on the road, flying and traveling to a different event has to be both a mentally and in some cases physically taxing grind. How would you describe that to someone that doesn't necessarily understand that? Like how difficult is that to do?
well, it makes a big difference if you can like reset. Like if it even if you're playing like the most I've ever played is 10 weeks in a row, and like you certainly are like a complete. I don't know about zombie, but like you are fully going through the motions, like the practice and everything. Like you just can't be like sharp and like I don't know. You can't be like bouncy on your feet after 10 weeks on the road. Sometimes missing a cut and going home for like 2 days and like the little stuff, like even getting different shirts or getting some different underwear or socks, like when you're just wearing the same exact clothing and doing the exact same things for 10 weeks in a row, it's just not a very fun life in general. So like I would always try to take one off and play like 5 and 3 or 5 and 4, whatever it evened out to be. And I thought that was better because I learned that my first year that playing 10 in a row, like you said, you need to finish top 15 to like really get going. So like playing 10 instead of 9 is not going to be the end of the world, which I'm very grateful this year. Like on PGA, they're broken up more. Like I'll play a lot more 3 2 weeks off, 3 1 week off, like stuff like that. So I think it's a lot healthier lifestyle to where you can actually go home and like for 2 days, like not get the clubs out of the thing and just lay around a little bit, actually get to like your trainer, your hometown and stuff. And I just think it's a much healthier life. It's tough for sure. And like you said, we're not staying in the Four Seasons and the Omnis and all that kind of stuff. Like you're staying in, it's not terrible, like Hampton Inns and stuff, but it's not the most luxurious stuff when that's, your entire home for whatever, 2.5 months or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, what did you do caddy wise? That's always interesting to me. Like, some guys have full time caddies, some don't. It's a hard expense to pay for. Throughout your time on the Corn Ferry Tour, if you had a full time caddy, how did you kind of handle that situation?
I've always had a full time guy. I've had probably only like 3 guys total, and like four. I've always liked to get a guy I like and like stick with him. The only time I have not had full time guys, my wife has caddied, and especially like she caddied this year in the Bahamas and stuff like that. A lot of times they're really expensive on the caddies, and it's like you want your significant other or whatever to be able to go. So actually, it's not super rare for guys to like have their wives or girlfriends, whatever, caddy those events. It just kind of makes sense for those. But like she's caddied for me and in Thailand and Kenya and the UAE, all those kind of places. So anytime I go somewhere crazy, a lot of times she'll be the one toting the bag around.
Is she charting greens or are you doing that on your own that week?
I'm pretty much doing all the golf stuff. I will. She's like very very smart, so I think that she's picked up on stuff very quickly because she knew nothing about golf and she was following me around for 3 or 4 years. And then like as soon as she started caddying, she's like, I see golf in a totally different way now. Like she actually understands what's going on up there. And I think it's made it more enjoyable for her to watch. But like she picked up on, it sounds dumb, but little stuff like what caddy gets the pin and when to pass it around, and when someone hits it in the bunker, you go rake the other person's bunker and stuff like that that she picked up on very quickly. That even I don't know all of it because I haven't caddied and stuff. And so it's that was a cool experience too. Where kind of when I lost status, there was like silver linings because she was caddying those foreign events and stuff.
You've done some Monday cues too. Like I've always described this Monday cue as like just a complete and total. I mean, if you like go three over through five holes, you might as well just take it
Yeah,
back to the
no
parking lot. Describe to me a Monday cue. Like, what is that like for you?
I mean, it depends on the Monday queue because there are some, like if you're doing it at those ones in Florida that you said, I think you said Hayden Buckley got through.
Yeah.
Those are they're 150 guys for two spots. Like they're terrible. Like you have to go out there and shoot 10 under, which I know guys have gotten through. Buckley's gotten through. Davis Riley got through one time there. So like obviously there is two guys that do have to get through. So that's kind of the positive or like the mindset you have to have. And but yeah, like if you're one under even through 5 or 6 holes, you're like, this is not looking good for me because you probably need to shoot like 8, 9, 10 in those with the two spots. However, on the other side of that, there is some you can do like Hawaii, Mexico, stuff like that that people aren't as willing to go to. But there
Right.
be 60 guys for 4 spots, and 25 of them might be like local guys or whatever. So you might be 4 spots, and 25 guys are competing for it. So those type of ones were much more doable, where you go out there, you play a good solid round, and you're in the mix. Like at least with 3 or 4 holes left, like you have a chance. The one that comes to mind the most is Mayakoba. I'd gone there and I think I did it 3 times and I got in once and then like lost in a playoff once. So like that one felt very realistic. Like going into it, I felt like there was, a 1 in 3 or 4 chance I could get in. Where some of these, like I was saying, and that the one in Miami for Panama and Colombia, I was like, I'm just going to go play my best and just see what happens. So, but I think the thing people don't think correctly about Mondays is they're like, you have to just play as aggressive as possible. The problem with that is if you make one mistake, you're also done. Like if
Right.
you go out there on the first hole and go for it from 260, go right at the hole and you hit in the water, you're done. Like there's no prolonging the runway at all. So you have to kind of find that balance of being aggressive enough to shoot the score while also like hanging around in there a little bit.
Did you Monday queue into the Canadian Open one time or did you have an exemption? Did you get in through
Yeah,
Monday?
yeah. Yeah, Monday, like I was saying, the ones out of the country, they
Yeah.
do, and I get why people don't play them. They're more expensive. There's more just hoopla going on. And but that was the same kind of thing. There was 4 spots and maybe like 70 people playing. So I went out and it was a really hard golf course. So I shot 2 under and was in a playoff there, which is in an ideal way how you want it. You don't want to have to shoot 8 or 9 under. But yeah, that was a good one. And yeah, most I would say I think I've Mondayed in maybe 3 or 4 times, and yeah, a couple of them have been out of the country, so they're much more doable.
When you were an amateur and you played the FedEx St. Jude, you had a great Sunday. I believe you actually held a share of the lead for a little bit of that, but you're still an amateur. I'm just curious, does it piss you off at all when you look at like, damn, I can't take this paycheck?
Yeah, I mean, looking back now, it's certainly like it was like 242 or something. I would have
Yeah,
been
you finished like T4. That's a stiff paycheck.
that would have been, and now with the purses even more, that would have been even better. So but yeah, that was really good. And that's where I practiced at. Like today, that's where I practiced at. So I'm out there all the time, and just to think about like that year and the next year, I played really well again. I think I ended up finishing like 25th or something, but I was actually better. I think I was in 10th going into Sunday. So like that, I had some really good rounds there. So that's kind of a good goal for me this year is to get into that top 70 so I can play in Memphis. That's kind of a realistic goal in the sense of, I'm going to be playing the lower tournaments and stuff. So like getting to East Lake is obviously a goal, but like that's going to be tougher not being in the elevated events and stuff. So getting in that top 70, I think is a very like healthy, good objective. So
I feel like on the surface, someone would see that you finished top four as an amateur in a PGA Tour event and like ask if it's a confidence builder. But I feel like at that point, you probably had to know you were one of the better golfers in the world, did you not? Like you already
yeah,
probably felt like you belonged.
yeah. I mean that stretch was just amazing. I mean, winning. I had a great college year, won national championship. Then I go play in the St. Jude, almost win that, and then go and win Sunny Hannah the next week. So it was just, I mean, I felt like no one could beat me almost at that point. Like, um, yeah, like even like I was kind of tired after that 3 week stretch and took like I think like 2 weeks off after that and just kind of enjoyed it a little bit. And but yeah, that was really cool to. It was definitely it gave me confidence, but like after winning, after how well I'd played for like the 12 months before that, it was almost a little more. I wasn't expecting to finish top five in Memphis, but like it didn't surprise me that I played pretty well. Like I was expecting to make the cut, finish top 30, whatever. But yeah, like you said, played great on Sunday, which always helps. But yeah, it definitely did help my confidence in the long run.
So you're now a PGA Tour rookie. You mentioned you leaving for Hawaii in a few days. Are you like confirmed in the Sony? I know that like a Fur last year was not confirmed into it. Was trying to figure out what the hell he was doing. Are you in the Sony?
I'm 8 spots in currently, so the deadline is Friday at 5 p.m. So knock on wood, yes, I am in. I would have to think. I don't have experience on how the PGA lines move
Yeah.
exactly, but I would have to think with 2 days left and I'm 8 spots in, I will get in. But it's not confirmed, no, until Friday. But I'm planning on playing as of now.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. It's interesting to me, like following pro golf and the changes with the live thing and everything else. They've like rewarded the top end of pro golf, but they've also like very much narrowed the path to getting on the PGA Tour, which I think is pretty short-sighted and kind of a travesty because you're just
Agree.
kind of denying the stars of tomorrow. I mean, I think what they've done as far as like trying to get on the PGA Tour now is next to impossible. It really like it kind of bothers me in some ways, but for you as a PGA Tour rookie, the path has never been harder. And
Yep.
so you got here, you got your PGA Tour card. Like, do you still feel like you have a lot to prove? Do you understand kind of the uphill battle you're against to kind of keep and retain status? Because I mean, hell, they
Yeah.
just cut it from 125 to 100.
Yeah. I mean, this is gonna be this year of all the years is gonna be the hardest year to keep your card because it's still so next year they're going to the limited fields.
Yeah.
So this year is the big fields, but only 100 keep. So this is kind of that transition year where like next year, it'll be 100 cards, but there'll be a lot less people playing. So that'll be more, equivalent to what the 125 was with the 150 fields or whatever. So yeah, it's going to be tough. And I mean, I'm treating it really the same as the Corn Ferry. Like I think a lot of guys are like, oh, finally you get your PJ Tour card, you're set. But like, not really. Like I need to go out there and play well. And it's kind of another Corn Ferry year essentially to where I need to finish in that top number, that 100, which doesn't sound like a huge, like it's that tough. But when there's
But it
50,
is.
70 guys in the elevated events, like if you don't win or whatever and get your way into those, like you're really playing for like 30 spots. So, I mean, and obviously it's better competition than the Corn Ferry and stuff like that. So, but yeah, that's my goal is to finish. I want to get to the top 70 is kind of my goal. The top 100 ultimately is what the goal is to get full status. And then once I get in that top 100 after this year, then you can take a little bit of a sigh of relief to where like all right now I'm like a PGA Tour member. Where this year, like you said, I'm a PGA Tour rookie. I think is the best way to put it. It's almost like a transition type year because you don't have all the same like status and pick your schedule like a guy does that keeps his card the year before.
Yeah, it's weird. Like PGA Tour rookies now are basically like a tryout. It's like you are on the tour, but like not like
Yeah,
you need to play well and play well very quickly. Can you map out a schedule at all, not knowing what events you're getting into? How difficult is that?
So I mean, I finished 16. So they do have sheets and stuff where you can see who got in what throughout the year. So I mean, I'll be in pretty much I say all the regular PGA Tour events, like not the elevated, I will pretty much be in for the most part. Like I won't be in Phoenix more than likely, like a couple of those big ones like that. But for the most part, I hope to get in 22 to 25 events this year. So I mean, it'll be enough. Like yeah, it's playing Puerto Rico instead of the Arnold Palmer and stuff like that. But and obviously, if I do win early, all that changes, and this is not relevant because I'm playing in the elevated events and stuff. But
Yeah.
assuming you have a normal year and you're doing kind of the normal trajectory, I'll play hopefully 22, 25, 26, somewhere in that range, and I'll be able to play good enough to finish in that top 100 and then be rolling from there. But like you said, it's disappointing. I think the PGA Tour and pro golf in general should be as open as possible because I think that's how you get the top 30 guys. And I do think it for now it still is the top 30 guys, other than some live guys that have left. That's like different point. But I do think if you make it super limited and 5 to 10 years from now, like you said, it's short sighted because I think you're gonna miss out on a few stars you maybe would
A
have had
100%.
that never will make it because it was not the same. Because there's so many guys, everyone thinks that like, oh, these top guys, they were all world beaters. It's not true. Like with Max Homa, like there's different
That's
people.
exactly what I was about to say. Does Max Homa get a PGA Tour card at this current setup?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of guys like Max
Gosh,
Homa.
I didn't get there until 27, 28.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not a it all these guys they are world beaters. Clearly they're showing they're world beaters, but like not everyone does it at 22, 23. And if you make it super close, you're going to have people just straight up quit by 25 or 26 if they haven't made it. And it's just disappointing where I think if you make these, lower tours better, more competitive, all that kind of stuff, like you'll get more guys to play and then more guys to compete. And it's just going to, I don't know, more turnover, I think is good, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, because it gets fresh, like the best people that are playing the best golf in the events, as opposed to just like locking in these 50 and then like only 10 are going to fall out basically regardless. And I just don't think that's the most like healthy system, like long term.
It's not. It's rewarding the guys who already got there in their late 40s, and I get that to
Yeah.
some degree. But I mean, Sam Bennett's a good example. There's no he's a talented dude. I think he ends up making it on tour, but there's no guarantee where his career turns
No.
out. He's one of the most
No.
popular amateurs in the last 2 years. It's
Yeah. Well, a great example too is that Luke Clanton kid right now.
yeah.
He's contending in every event he plays in essentially. But if he turns pro and gets a couple invites and then happens to not play, he could even not even missing cuts. Let's say he's just finishing 20th, 30th, 15th, whatever. He's just going to have to go to Q school like everybody else. Like there's no guarantee that like you've done all these great things that you're just going to be like put on the PGA Tour with like endless runway and for success. Like you have to do it right now, or like you're just like everybody else.
Well, didn't Shipley miss second stage? Like that's another example. I feel like whatever he did this summer, he should be awarded with some kind
Yeah.
of events or some kind of status instead of like, sorry, kid, you're back at square one. It's just
Yeah, I mean those people too. I think there are. I don't know Neil Shipley. I don't know even like Sam Bennett. I do know, but not super well. There's so many people that are just as I don't want to say just as good, but there's so many people that are really good that I notice this on social media sometimes. People are like, "Oh, this guy's been in the limelight a lot. He should be on the PGA Tour." Where like there's a lot of people that are just as good. They just haven't maybe made the cut in the U.S. Open or something and got that camera time. I think people a lot of times, like casual fans especially, they think that like there's way less good players than there is. Like, because in reality, I really think from 300 in the world to 1,000, I mean, there's almost zero difference. And like, there is the top guys. There's top maybe 20 guys. Then there's like the 30 to 150 that are all very similar, and then the 150 honestly to like 1,000 are all so close that like a couple will be handpicked and like seen on TV, and people think they're better, but they're just everybody's so close and they catch fire at the right time. Like it's a different story.
I totally agree. I mean, go watch a Corn Ferry Tour event and just go watch like six random groups on a Thursday and tell me the drastic difference between that and a PGA Tour
Yeah,
event. There's just really not one.
absolutely.
Last
Mm-hmm.
couple of things I have for you as we wrap up. There's now, I don't know, call it famous, infamous photo. The photo of you on the 2017 Walker Cup team. The dudes in that photo are some pretty heavy hitters at this point. You've got Colin Morikawa, Scotty Scheffler, Doc Redman, I think maybe Mab McNeely, a couple other guys
Mm-hmm.
on there. Wasn't Sam Burns like an alternate on that team?
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you
He
know
was
at the
so
time
good.
just how absurd that would be?
I knew they were all really good, but what's crazy is so Scotty and Will Zalatoris were the last two on that team, and then yeah, Sam Burns was like the first alternate. So I mean, that shows how deep it was. Davis Riley was probably I don't know fifth alternate or whatever. Like it was a amazing 10, 9, whatever the team was. But like the guys after were really good too. It's not like it fell off after that 10th guy. Like you could have played that in those next five or whatever, and they're all freaks too.
I read something recently. I think now that you have your PGA Tour card, every single member of that team has now been on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, that's great. I don't know, but I would have to think no other team could say that.
I don't think there's no way there's been another team.
Mm-mm.
And then the mid-am part of it is interesting to me. Like what is like I believe like Stuart Hagestad was like 27 at the time. What is that like having like a mid-am on a team like that? What is he like?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of the I don't want to say father figure, but he had obviously more experience because the rest of us were like he played on a Walker Cup before, and all of us were 19, 20, 21, 22, whatever. So he was kind of and he lived also like he lived in LA, which it was at LA Country Club. So he was kind of the person that actually like knew anything. None of us knew. We were just doing what we're told. So which I'm 27 now, and I still don't feel like I know anything. So like at the time, he seemed way older, but no, he was a good addition to the team to kind of it was just something different, really. Like the rest of us, we all knew each other and everything. So it was kind of cool to just have kind of a middleman between kind of you and like the captain almost, that feel.
Who was the captain?
Spider Miller.
Okay.
Yeah, I still talk to him occasionally. He still texts me randomly, and I've played golf with him down in, he lives in Palm Beach. And so I still talk to him randomly. He's a great guy.
The last couple of things, I'm just cleaning up my notes here. One thing I missed on the live thing. Did you mess up your thumb at the live Q school?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Yeah, I almost said that earlier, and then we talked about something else. So I guess I'll break down what happened at Live Q School. So the format was basically like the Q School and like for Corn Ferry, but it all broke all into 1 week. So we started on Friday. So there's round one that was like 80 people. They cut it to 20 in ties, just one day. So I got through that. I finished like 16th or something. So you start the next day, and there's people that were like exempt to the second round or whatever. So it's basically the same thing. It was like 80 guys, 70 or 80 guys, and then it was cut to 20 exactly. So like there'd be a playoff. It needed to be exactly 20. So I finished solo second in that day, shoot like bogey free, 6 under, play great. So I'm like, all right, like I have a chance here because I'm going into this next day. There's 36 holes. I've obviously played well at this course. And actually, one of the Challenge Tour events I played was at this course. So I had experience here. So I'm like, all right, there's 20 guys, 36 holes for 3 spots. Like those aren't bad odds at all. So, and playing as good as I was at the time, I was feeling good. First hole, hit a bad tee shot, get it back out in the fairway, hit it up by the green. It's a par five. And I'm kind of up against a tree, and I'm like, all right, this is like not good. Let's just get it in the bunker and try to just, not get off to a terrible start. So I just kind of like chip it into the bunker, and I like feel a little pinch or whatever. And I look down, and I just absolutely gash my thumb just
Oh,
wide open. Which the picture I posted a picture, but that was after it'd been like pushed back together, and then 36 holes of golf had been played. So it actually looked a lot better. Like it was so open. Like if I just like kept going, it was just like gone almost. So
oh my
that was
God.
so that was very disappointing because like it's the shotgun was like at 7:15, and by 7:30, like my hopes are done basically. So that was really upsetting. So I put a huge bandage on it. I had to play 35 more holes. I think I shot like 73, 72 or something. So I actually got it around okay, but like wasn't gonna like do any damage in that form. But the real concern was, like I said, I was doing PGA or Corn Ferry Q school right after that.
Right.
So as soon as that happens, I'm like, I might have just ruined like my career basically, like or at least the next year. And after didn't have status like that year, I'm like, this could be really bad. Like, is this not meant to be or something? So play that day. Like it's just a mess. I have to like wrap it up to shower. We're heading to the airport. We're driving to Dubai like an hour and a half, and then flying straight to Miami, I think, or yeah, straight to Miami. No, straight to Orlando. So it's like a 15-hour flight or whatever. And like the whole time I'm thinking like, please let this thing, because it's wrapped up still. I can't even see it. I'm like, please let's somehow let it be better when we get there. And we get there, go to the doctor, and like it's not great, but they're like, okay, like you can't really do anything worse to it. It's kind of stuck together, whatever. So go out to Q school in the first round. I'm wearing a bandage still. It's like black and bandaged up. I don't play very good. And then after the second day, I'm like, all right, I'm not wearing the bandage anymore. Like I'm just gonna play. And like if it hurts, it hurts. Which it really didn't actually hurt that bad because like the club was kind of pushing down here and not like what would hurt would be like pulling this. So it really wasn't that painful. And then started to play some really good golf from there, and then it worked out. So but yeah, that was a crazy deal that one, it cost me any chance at the live, but I was also very concerned that it was going to affect me for the next week too.
How different is the vibe at Q school versus a normal event?
Definitely quieter at Q school, like on the range, everybody's a little more locked in and just, I don't know. It's definitely, I've played a bunch of them, which most pro golfers have. Like I've always had success in them because I do think confidence goes a long way because most people at Q school have never really like, I'm saying this in the nicest way possible, like just never really gotten through and played on the tours and all that. So I do think when you've had success and like played on the Corn Ferry, played tour events, all that, you have a huge advantage because the Q school seems smaller, kind of. I don't know if that makes sense, but because a lot of people like, it's their Super Bowl every year is trying to get through first, get through second, like hopefully get to the final stage to have a Corn Ferry card. But when you're like coming off the Corn Ferry or, you've played in the US Open and stuff like that, I think it's a lot easier to like just treat it for what it is and like go out there and just play solid golf and like handle your business a little bit. But yeah, there's definitely I think for me in general, I'm very similar at a second stage than I am like at a Corn Ferry event. But there's definitely other people are definitely noticeably different for sure.
Does everybody have a caddy or some people tote in their own bag?
I think at first stage, I'm kind of making this up, but I think at first stage you don't have to have a caddy, but most people do. And then I think at second stage you have to. But again, don't quote me on that because I'm actually not sure. But that's something like that. And at final stage is basically just like a real event. Like you have to walk off your yardages, you have to have a caddy, everything. Where second stage and first stage you can have rangefinders and like it's a little more casual.
Are people allowed to attend? Like, is there any gallery?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, there's no rules against anything. Like you can just go out to first stage and follow whoever, which is actually a underutilized thing because like there'll be some like big names in second stage and stuff sometimes, like a Boo Weekly or like
Yeah.
a completely random example, but like there'll be people that like people very much know playing, and you can just walk right beside them for 18 holes, which is kind of cool.
Last thing I have for you, you seem as confident as ever, and I have to imagine, you have a great challenge in front of you being a rookie on the PGA Tour that we talked about, but things kind of finally went your way as we've discussed. Do you feel as like free as ever as you have in your professional career?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that like since I was 10 years old, it's been my goal to get to the PGA Tour. And like, I'm right here playing as good a golf as I ever have with a fresh slate starting in Hawaii. So, I mean, my game feels good right now. Everything's lining up nicely. Just got married. I'm in a good spot with everything. So, kind of the only thing left is just go out there and play as good a golf as I can. And whether that's missing the first five cuts or winning the first five tournaments, like it is what it is. And I'm just going to be doing my best every week. So,
He is Braden Thornberry. This was awesome, man. I really appreciate the time. If you win the first five events, will you just come back on?
yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it, man. You have a good one.
Yes, sir.